Possibilities are all around us. Everywhere we look, we see opportunity. We see potential in unexpected places. And when we share our knowledge, vision, and connections, we turn great ideas into action. In communities all around the world that we call home. Like transforming an old bus to feed hungry children, or providing life-saving equipment to those who need it most. From fighting disease to rebuilding schools, together we can make real change happen. We're Rotary. We are people of action. Get involved today at Rotary.org.
Fellow Rotarians, friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 13th panel discussion organized by the Rotary E-Club of 3310. Our panel discussion tonight will be focused on dengue prevention and control. We are all aware that dengue is endemic in the tropical and subtropical regions around the world, and many countries, including Malaysia and Singapore, are having endemic dengue because Southeast Asia is one of the most impacted areas for dengue. The number of cases that have been reported to the WHO have increased 8-fold over the past 2 decades. From around slightly over 505,000 cases in the year 2000, the numbers of reported dengue cases have increased to 2.4 million by 2010. It has increased to more than 4.2 million. The reported number of deaths from severe dengue has increased from 960 cases only in 2015, in the year 2000, to about more than 4,000 by 2015. And there has been an all-time high in the incidence of dengue cases in 2019. And increasingly, governments are recognizing that the burden of dengue as an infectious disease is high, and action has been taken, including the governments of Malaysia and Singapore. And we Rotarians, as people of action, have been championing the fight against dengue. We are privileged tonight to have with us 3 distinguished Rotarians who have been leading the fight against dengue, and they are from the Rotary Club of Johor Bahru. Our panelists tonight are PDG engineer John Chia, who has been leading the fight with dengue in his capacity as an engineer, a civil engineer, and also a public health engineer when he was working with the government for more than 20 years. After he left the government service, he set up his own consulting company, Sienco, and is now a senior consultant engineer. And as a leader in Rotary, he has been championing this fight. Our second panelist is past President Dr. Siva Murthy. And Dr. Siva Murthy is the trailblazing chairman of the Rotary District 3310 Committee Against Dengue. Our third panelist is Dr. Savas Shamugan, and he is a senior surgeon. He is the senior consultant surgeon at the Putri Hospital in Johor, and also an associate professor with two universities, the Monash University campus in JB, and also the hospital in Bangui. Now, I would like to invite our first panelist, PP Dr. Sivamoorthy, to share with us his journey as the pioneer chairman of the Action Committee Against Dengue. And Dr. Siva himself is also a victim of dengue. And during this panel discussion, he will be sharing with us some of his personal experiences he went through when he was a dengue patient, and how his own son was also struck by dengue in the process. Dr. Siva, please.
Thank you, PP Mayan, fellow Rotarians, members of the organizing committee, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. First, let me thank the organizing committee of Rotary E-Club for creating this panel for discussion on dengue preventive control. I am delighted and honored to be a panelist and glad to offer my service and contribution in the name of Rotary, Service Above Self, and National Service. I'm here as the past chairman of the District 3310 Dengue Control Committee, which has several dengue control projects since 2011 under the mentorship of past District Governor, Engineer John Chia Kamlung. Now, please let me address some salient issues about dengue. Next. WHO, World Health Organization, considers dengue a neglected disease, although it is the fastest growing mosquito-borne disease. Yet, limited national and international funding have hampered dengue control activities, including efforts to control the population of Aedes mosquito and the development of effective vaccine development. Dengue fever infected some 50 to 100 million people each year. Let me give you some hard statistics. Malaysia, dengue fever reached an all-time high, 130,000 and 174 deaths for the period January to December 2019. The table below following gives you a comparative figure 2019 and 2020. The total cases for the 2 years is 200,359 and death alarming 294. Now then the next question is, what are these factors that contributes to the increasing cases of dengue? The first fundamental factor is the change of the virus type, the mutation of virus type 1 to type 2, now type 3 and 4. There had been a massive population in the urban centers, more concentrated. In other words, dengue has been prevalent more in suburban and urban areas. The weather, another significant factor, changing weather with rainy season in between dry and hot spells. All this has led to a decline in overall cleanliness. Now, let me tell you how the government can get involved in assisting bringing down the dengue, to control dengue. Now, the instruction comes from the top. The Director General of Health, Malaysia, issued a circular in 2010 to set up two levels of committee. One is Jawatan Kuasa Peringkat Kebangsaan, which is the federal committee, and the other is Mesyuarat Jemaah Menteri Peringkat Negeri, which is the district dengue outbreak committee, has to be set up all over the country. In Johor, Rotary Club was fortunate to be the important partner in this dengue outbreak committee. Now, the district dengue outbreak committee in Johor is headed by the district officer as chairman, and it holds weekly meetings with all the agencies, including Rotary Club of Johor Bahru. Now, it must be noted, noted the composition of the dengue district committee clearly shows the importance and significance of the role it has to play, and all agencies within the strata of the state government are involved. To start with, the chairman is a district officer. The secretarial is handled by the district health officer, and the members include secretary of city council, hospital director, district information officer, district engineer, water board engineer, district education officer, chief police officer, and NGO Rotary Club had been playing a critical role for the role of NGOs. Now, we had the opportunity of sharing notes with the civil servants on how a private sector could tackle the dengue preventive control. Next, now you may want to know what is the scope of the dengue district committee. Now, basically, the dengue district committee, which met monthly, has to coordinate participation of various agencies which involves in anti-dengue activities, identify resources, funds, manpower, tools for fogging, and in this respect, Rotary Club of Johor Bahru obtained $10,000 from COMBI, which is part of the Ministry of Health, which is Communication for Behavioral Impact. Now, the promotion and participation of the community and the students' role in Gotong Royong are some of the important activities of the Dengue District Committee. They conducted string of anti-dengue campaigns on weekly basis in various places. To implement programs, communication for behavioral impact can be in dengue hotspots. Let me highlight next. What are the activities undertaken by the dengue committee under the auspices of Rotary Club of Johor Bahru? Now, I must stress that the other club that was involved is Rotary Centennial. Now, some of the activities that were carried out during those periods are, number one, we organized dengue awareness seminars for students and teachers in Johor Bahru. Now, 8 schools were identified for this purpose, and the interactors were playing a critical role in this respect. And they were our important players in disseminating information to the homes of the family where they were staying. The interactors played a very critical role, and parents came to know their high risk non-cleanliness and stagnant water can create breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Now we must give due credit for the interactors for their great role they played, and the support given by the various principals of the schools. Next, the students helped the senior Rotarians to conduct Gotong Royong and seminars, dialogues, and exhibition. We also spent quite a bit of money on dengue control pamphlets and other pamphlets on literature on Aedes mosquitoes. Cleaning operations in several areas in MPJB in and out were conducted by this group. Now, in terms of various activities, I must say that our next speaker will give you a comprehensive coverage. PDG Doncha will give you comprehensive coverage and will give you extensive coverage with pictures to describe the activities like cutting of grass in gotong royong, litter picking, drainage, cleaning, and fogging. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, now in order to make sure that the organization the organization Dengue Control Malaysia has a permanent feature within Rotary Action Group on dengue was formed during the Rotary Convention in Bangkok. And I'm proud to say that our Secretary of RAC, short form for Rotary Action Group, Dengue Control Malaysia PDG, is no other than Engineer John Chia Kamlung. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, the sad part, and maybe the most nightmarish part is I was a dengue victim myself. And I had 10 to 12 days of suffering, high fever, severe headache, aches and pain, eye pain, typically behind the eyes, muscle, joint, and bone pain, fatigue, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, and severe stomachache. But the sad part is, as I am a practicing tax consultant, I had to work to be done during that period because of the tax season period. And I had actually did some work while I was in the hospital, 10 days, to ensure that filing of the returns and deadlines are met. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am sure you don't like to be a victim like me. Unfortunately, my son got it in the following month. And that led to a major fogging exercise in the area that I stay, that is Taman Majri Park. The place was fogged, and there were more than 2 dengue victims in that particular area. So that, I must say, is a warning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Take good care. Now, if it may be humorous if I have to tell you this. Now we have our own WhatsApp group, and one of the past presidents says our dengue chairman was attacked by a mosquito. Well, I'm back here, and thank God I had excellent doctors who give me the best care in Johor Specialist Center, led by past President Dato Singaravelu. Now, we hope a cure for dengue will become a reality. But meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, prevention via mosquito control and precaution will remain our only shield against dengue. Now, modern science has given an opportunity for the creation of creating genetically modified mosquito. It's been initiated by the Institute of Medical Research. I don't know how much success they had, or whatever it is. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, stop those blood suckers, the Aedes mosquitoes. Thank you.
Thank you, maybe Dr. Siva, for sharing those very, very interesting and enlightening experiences of yours. The Aedes mosquito, as you have correctly pointed out, are the main carriers of these dengue virus. But the mosquitoes themselves were infected actually by the people who have been infected by dengue. An uninfected Aedes mosquito who bites and sucks the blood of a dengue victim gets infected. And when the same mosquito bites another person who is not infected by dengue yet, the dengue virus is then transmitted to that person through the salivary glands and the saliva of the Aedes mosquito. Hence, there is this cycle that we must break. So how can we, as individuals, try to stop those bloodsuckers, as Dr. Siva has said? Interestingly, dengue cannot be spread from person to person. It must be through an infected female Aedes mosquito who needs the protein from the blood of people to get their young. They need protein to generate the next generation, and they do this very proficiently. The preferred habitat, as has been correctly pointed out by Dr. Siva, is the urban and suburban areas. And our homes and the areas around our homes are the preferred habitats of these mosquitoes. Stagnant water in receptacles within our own homes, like vases for our flowers, flower pots, and so on, and even our sanitary systems can become breeding grounds for mosquitoes, like Aedes, who are most active during the day. They bite during the day, not at night, as most of us believe mosquitoes do. They're most active immediately after sunrise and before sunset. In Singapore, the National Environmental Agency is the leading government authority fighting the spread of Aedes mosquitoes. But they cannot succeed without the collaboration and cooperation of all of us. In Singapore, we have what we call dengue clusters. A red zone is one where more than 10 people have been infected by dengue. And we have the 5-step mossy loosening of the soil of our flower pots that have hardened to prevent stagnation of water, getting ourselves clear of all the vases, turning them out so that there will be no still water, and our pails are turned upside down, our flower pot plates are cleaned, because the Aedes can lay eggs, and these eggs can stay alive and can be reactivated into larvae for several months. In fact, almost 9 months they can stay without water. But once rain and water comes back, it will survive and become larvae, pupa, and then adult Aedes mosquitoes. For individuals, we have this SAW. What is S? S is to spray mosquito repellents to prevent yourselves from being bitten. A is to apply mosquito repellents after spraying all those insecticides in our surrounding environment. And W is for wearing long sleeve tops and trousers, if you like to say that, so that the chances and the risk of being infected are less. So if you are staying in a dengue infected area, as Dr. Siva has said, then there will be fogging and so on. And to share with us more about the various methods of controlling the spread of dengue through the Aedes mosquitoes, we have PDG engineer John Chia, who will tell us about the various methods we have to make sure that this primary and key fundamental control of dengue spread is effective. PDG Chia, please.
Thank you, Past President Mayan. And we just heard Dr. Siva mentioned, as long as vaccine is not available, to a public health engineer like myself, I believe the best way is still seek out, search, and destroy their breeding grounds. Seek them out. World Health Organization has given us the opportunity to give us some guidelines as to how we can go to fight this dengue disease. And the 3 methods that they have used so far, which I will elaborate on it, is first one is the biological control. The second one is the chemical control. And the third one is environmental control. Let me show you the first slide. the first slide. Under biological control, feeding guppy fishes into stagnant pools of water, which we find in open drains or ponds. Guppy fishes love to eat the larvae. And you can see that this shows our Rotarians feeding the pond with guppy fishes. The next slide will show you the way we also control by chemical. See the type of material that we are using for the fogging. We have got Fenthion, Malathion, and Phentotion, and Thermophos. But please bear in mind, these chemicals are toxin. Please leave the fogging to the professionals. The next slide will show you the environmental way of we can landscape an area. But please believe me, such a lovely landscape as put up by architects or engineers are also places of breeding grounds. Look at the grating. The drain is closed up. Underneath that grating, there is water flowing. Sometimes, and most of the times, you find that the water is clogged underneath those drains. And therefore, you get also potential breeding grounds. Even the flower pots itself, look at it. Once the soil is hardened, you get a 1 shilling thickness of water, and that's where your breeding starts again for the mosquitoes. Next slide. Sitting in the State Johor Special Dengue Committee, we are tasked to search and destroy the Aedes mosquitoes breeding grounds. And this is what our State Dengue Committee face daily in their efforts to fight the bite. The Malaysian government and its various agencies like the Ministry of Health, Southern West Malaysia, Inda Water Consortium, the Fire Department, local councils, and the Drainage and Irrigation Department are conducting out a series of cleaning and anti-dengue campaigns to get rid of stagnated pools of water which are potential breeding grounds. This is an example of the clogged drains. Slide 5, the next slide. Even septic tanks are also good breeding grounds. Side lanes and back lanes, the next slide, are concerns also for breeding grounds. Sometimes in some of these undergrowth, you can find empty tin cans. All you need is to get a little bit of water, clear water, into the tin cans, and you get breeding grounds. Next slide shows the monsoon drains. See the number of tin cans and bottles in that monsoon drain. And what do you get? Stagnated water in the bottles, and you get also breeding grounds. The next slide will also show you open spaces where open dumping is simply done. But we have got methods of looking at the matter, and therefore we say, let us have good sanitary landfill methods. Next slide. In factories, we find that we also have breeding grounds. Look at the tarpaulin, canvas sheet. There are also stagnated pools of water as a result of rainwater, and those are also breeding grounds. Next slide. Here, even in construction sites, we find that we have got stagnated water, and those are good potential breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Next one. While we are looking at the public spaces, inside the house itself, as Mayan has mentioned just now, you also got to be very careful because some of these places that I show you on flower pot plates, on garden traps, on corners of these toilet bowls, and also on trays of refrigerator, they are also stagnated water. And outside the house itself, the next slide, you find that these are also possible. Look at the gutter itself. They are being stagnated. And as a result, you get mosquitoes breeding. Look at the drain itself. If you cover with slabs, you don't see it, but they are underneath those drains. And they are good potential breeding grounds. Look at even the trees, hold the trees. They contain water, rainwater. Just only an inch of water will give you good potential breeding grounds. Next slide. Now, as I just mentioned, dengue vaccine not effective enough of Singapore. Manila suspends the dengue vaccine. So what did I say? If there are not vaccines available yet, the only best way is to search and destroy their breeding grounds. So we have carried out a lot of systematic gotong royong or search and destroy methods. We carried out in Johor, where even the fire department comes out to ensure that the drains are being cleaned up. This is what we call search and destroy methods that we are carrying out in certain areas in Johor. Next slide. We also carried out gotong royong, search and destroy in Malacca itself, where the Ministry of Health is also involved with the Institution of Engineers. And also you can see that our DG is down there to participate in the gotong royong. Next slide. Even Singapore, NEA, mentioned by past President Mayan, is also involved. And we were giving them seminars as to how we can get rid of potential breeding grounds. Next slide. We have carried out much activities to control the spread of dengue. So in conclusion, RAG dengue control has been actively conducting seminars and conferences in universities and in most Rotary Zone institutes. Rotary International has even recognized our efforts and has published an encouraging report in its magazine, The Rotarian, in the June 2018 issue. See slide 17. That is in the Rotarian magazine. I will definitely ask my fellow Rotarians and fellow citizens to spend time to work together to carry out anti-dengue campaigns in cooperation with the government and its various agencies to combat this dengue disease, which is very prevalent in the tropical and subtropical areas. I thank you for the opportunity to speak a few words on dengue control. Thank you.
Thank you, PDG Engineer John Chia, for sharing with us those various methods to kill off the Aedes mosquitoes. We are also aware that the Aedes mosquito is one of the most prevalent viral infectious diseases of concern, and we need to search and destroy those habitats where they are breeding in. For lay people like us, what are the signs and symptoms that we should be looking out for to be able to know whether we have been infected by the dengue virus? Generally, most people who are infected by dengue would have mild symptoms, and some are even asymptomatic. But they can be infectious before the symptoms come on and after they have recovered from their fever period. To share with us some of these clinical symptoms and how we can manage it, and also to distinguish it from other viral diseases like Zika, the dreaded one for women who are pregnant because their fetus could be infected through it and develop meningitis and syphilis. Or chikungunya, that dreaded bone-breaking fever, which will cause immense pain for the victims. The early symptoms, severe flu conditions, are almost similar, but the management is very important because it is very critical to prevent dengue from developing into severe dengue, which can lead to death. And to share with us all this interesting information about clinical management of dengue patients and how to distinguish and clearly diagnose and manage and prevent severe dengue, we have Dr. Shanmugam. Dr. Shanmugam, please.
I thank you, Madam Moderator, Past President Tan Mei Yen of the E Club, my fellow panelists, fellow Rotarians, ladies and gentlemen. I'll go to the next. I'll explain from the next slide, please. Now, know the essentials, please. The clinical aspects of dengue are basically, it is a viral disease, number one, like your influenza, coronavirus, or Zika, or chikungunya. They are all viruses. And generally, most viral diseases exhibit almost the same symptoms as our moderator just said. Bone-breaking pain, muscle pain, fever, lightheadedness, and even nausea, vomiting, and everything else. And the effect they have on other organs as in Zika or in chikungunya. Now, it is carried by a mosquito. The generic name for that mosquito is an Aedes mosquito. And the two specific forms are the Aedes aegypti and the Aedes albopictus. I'll tell you how to differentiate them in a short while. It is characterized generally by high fever, bone aches, muscle aches, and a distinct rash. Dengue is of two forms. The milder form called dengue fever, DF, or the more severe form, dengue hemorrhagic fever. And lastly, remember of the essentials, dengue can kill. I'll explain next in the slide how to distinguish the two carriers of Aedes aegypti as the mosquitoes. The Aedes aegypti has a lyre, the musical instrument, lyre-shaped sort of white structure on the back of the mosquito. Whereas the Aedes albopictus has a long median longitudinal white stripe extending from the anterior, that is the front margin, to about the level of the wing root. That is a long line. That will tell you it is an Aedes albopictus, but both are Aedes mosquitoes. Going on to the next slide, I will tell you of the world incidence, meaning to say, it is generally located, this dengue virus, around the equatorial belt and just above and below to the tropics, as we say. And the whole world sort of incidence of cases has been around 50 to 100 million cases per year, and 500,000 of dengue hemorrhagic cases of these 100 to 50 million cases. And of these, generally there's been about 22,000 deaths, and that's we can afford not to have. And next slide, I will explain that dengue cases in Malaysia. This particular slide shows you In the year 2010, on your far left, there were 46,171 cases, of which there were 134 deaths. And on the upper scale, coming towards the year 2015, 6 years ago, 120,836 cases, 336 deaths. See that the curve is actually going up and up. Coming closer to our year. Next, please. In the year 2019, there were 119,198 cases, and there were 162 deaths. Now, 2020 figures I'm yet to receive, and I'll explain in the next slide, please. Dengue situation in Singapore. I've taken just one particular slide to inform you all. A period between July 7th and July 13th of the year 2019, the highest recorded since January 2016, there were 637 cases in a week. 7,438 cases as of July 15, 5 times more than in the same period in 2018. Why the spike in this particular year? And then dengue hemorrhagic fever cases reported as of July 6, more than 3 times the number in the same period. And there were 182 active clusters and 5 deaths in that year. There were 48 high-risk areas detected in Singapore, neighborhoods including Woodlands, Geylang, Chai Chee, Pasir Ris, and Jurong East. And on to the next slide, I will explain. How do you define dengue then? Dengue fever is an infectious tropical disease around the tropics caused by the dengue virus. It is transmitted by several species of the mosquito. The fever is observed frequently in people who travel around the world. Another definition is, it's also known as a breakbone fever, is a mosquito-borne viral infection caused by the Flavivirus of the dengue, and is transmitted by Aedes aegypti or Aedes albopictus. And in a sense, all this translates to a debilitating viral disease of the tropics transmitted by mosquitoes, as you know, causing sudden fever, acute pains in the joints and body, aches and muscle pain, and if untreated, death occurs. Now, the origin of this dengue is very interesting. I mean, as a surgeon, a doctor, and a historian myself, I looked into the history of this and I found that the word dengue actually comes from the Swahili word dinga. It is a short form for a far longer name called Cardinga popo. The Spanish adopted the names dinga, meaning fastidiousness or being careful. Now, the slaves in West India, they called it the dandy fever. They gave them some sort of high name for that. And in China, the first case that was recorded in the Chinese medical encyclopedia was from the Jin dynasty, and the Chinese called it a water poison disease. Rightly so. In the 1780s, the first dengue epidemic was seen in Asia, Africa, and North America. Now, let me show you the guy or the person, the doctor who described the disease in the next slide. This is Dr. Benjamin Rush in 1789. Of course, he was the physician to the first president of the USA, George Washington. He described this case very clearly in 1789, and that was our first record in the medical aspect of things to show in our medical encyclopedia that this disease, dengue, was described by a famous physician, Benjamin Rush, in 1789. And we actually follow on that particular description of Aedes as a breakbone fever. Next, please. And our medical definition on our side is basically it's an acute infectious disease characterized by severe headaches, joint pains, a rash that is caused by single-stranded RNA virus. Now, what is an RNA virus? It is a particular type of genetic sort of collection of proteins compared to other DNA types of viruses, which are different. And this RNA virus is called the Flavivirus, species dengue virus, transmitted, as you know, by the mosquitoes. Next, please. Right. The dengue virus, or DENV, is the cause of dengue fever. It is mosquito-borne, as you already know. I've mentioned this so many times. Single positive RNA virus of the family Flaviviridae, genus Flavivirus. And 5 serotypes of the virus have been found, although earlier there were only 4, all of which can cause the full spectrum of the disease. Nevertheless, scientists' understanding of the dengue virus may be simplistic, as rather than distinct antigenic groups, a continuum appears to exist. The same study identified 47 strains of dengue viruses. Additionally, co-infection with and the lack of rapid tests for Zika virus and other sorts of viral diseases makes it difficult at times until and unless you come to a clinic where we can specifically diagnose your disease. On the right-hand side, you see the 4 serotypes, and now we have a 5th serotype. And then V2 is a predominant serotype causing dengue fever and dengue hemorrhagic fever, but there can be a combination of all. Next, please. What are the signs and symptoms? Very common. You've already heard it many times now. There is high fever, myalgia or bone pains, nausea and vomiting, and of course you have headaches and a particular eyeball pain at the back of the eyeballs, chills and rigors, backaches, and so on and so forth. And this usually indicates that your platelet count has come below 150,000. Now, let us know the 7 warning signs of dengue. High fevers, bone aches and muscle pain, nausea and vomiting, rashes occurring in the body, eyeball pain, very typical, headaches, intense sometimes, and you really become moribund and you like fall ill and you want to lie down all the time. And the last, more dangerous aspect of the disease is bleeding from various parts of the body, including the nose. We call it epistaxis, from your mouth, from your anus, where you pass motion. It can be bleeding gastrointestinal tract, as we call it, upper GI or lower GI, meaning to say you vomit blood or you pass out blood in your feces. And next, I'll explain the rash. What do you really need to know about the rash? These rashes can be extremely itchy. Honestly, ladies and gentlemen, the itchiness is unbearable sometimes, causing the affected skin to peel off. Since there is no specific treatment for dengue rashes, the patient should bear in mind its duration and use some skin cream lotions for relief. And once the dengue rash has subsided, you can now add a moisturizing liquid without perfume, of course. That can help the skin to return to almost normal. The first dengue rash, please be reminded, occurs within 1 to 2 days of fever. That is a giveaway as dengue. Along with some blood tests, we can confirm dengue for you. The second stage of the rash appears when the fever is subsiding and lasts for 1 to 5 days. Here in this picture, I've showed various types of dengue rashes, and you may in sometime in your lifetime seen some of these rashes among your friends or relatives. Next, please. Now, the danger or the dangerous part of this dengue fever is the dengue hemorrhagic fever. The earlier one is just dengue fever, DF, but this is called DHF, meaning dengue hemorrhagic fever. Hemorrhagic, in layman's term, means a bleeding disease caused by the dengue. And this bleeding disease can lead to dengue shock by loss of blood in your body parts, in your intestines. And that shock can lead you to even death. So what we're talking about is hemorrhages, plasma leakage into the body parts, hemoconcentration, loss of body fluids within your own body, hypotension when all this body fluid is gone, and you have low tension or low high pressures, and your heart cannot sustain circulatory failure, the whole heart system and the circulatory system fails, you go into a shock, and most of the time it is an irreversible shock, which finally leads to death. Next, please. Again, to emphasize dengue hemorrhagic symptoms, remember there's always a febrile phase as early dengue. There's a headache, mouth and nose bleeding are the signs to show you that it is a hemorrhagic fever. Muscle aches, joint pains, vomiting, rashes, and diarrhea are as usual. But diarrhea is a feature that you got to watch out, because the intestines are now involved, and the insides of the intestines are sort of raw, and they can bleed anytime, and they often start with diarrhea first, followed by bleeding. So the critical phases will be pressure drops, hypotension, that is fluid accumulating in the lungs called pleural effusion. There's water collecting in the intestines because of the inflammation of the intestines. We call it ascites. And gastrointestinal bleeding is bleeding from the nose, mouth, and ear. From the anus. All right. The recovery phase, the patient can go into altered consciousness or altered level of consciousness because of the involvement of the brain or bleeding that has taken place in the brain. All dangerous symptoms. Seizures can take place once the brain is affected. Itching becomes intense. The heart becomes very slow and finally stops. On the right-hand side, you can see some signs of hemorrhage or bleeding in the gums, in the eyes, in the skin, and on the chest wall, and everywhere you scratch, you might bleed. Next, please. So how do we confirm dengue? If you have symptoms, my honest opinion is, and if you're doubtful as to what you have, you know it can be a viral disease because of the common symptoms I mentioned. Please seek a doctor's help. And the basic thing the doctor does will distinguish whether this is dengue or not. And one of the commonest things that we do as clinicians is to check your platelet count. Now, a platelet is a white cell. Now, among the white cells, we have plenty of types of white cells: neutrophils, eosinophils, platelets, and lymphoblasts and lymphocytes and things like that. Now, the platelet is a special type of white cell that is there to help in clotting of blood. In dengue, these cells get less and less by the effect of the dengue virus. So much so, a normal count of 450 to 150 drops to almost 10 and maybe even less. And when it drops that level, you are going to start to bleed. And if you're not caught in time, this alone will tell you that your way of recovery is going to be the other way. And then bleeding occurs. Right. Having said this, this is one of the first and primary tests. The second one we do is serology. Serology in dengue testing is basically a direct method, which is fairly straightforward in most hospitals. We check for the virus isolation if necessary, if you have a weak center, or a genome selection, all that not necessary. But NS1 detection is very important. Dengue virus NS1 antigen is easily detected in the blood. And if this is shown to be positive, it means that you are actively having dengue at that moment. And it's a fast sort of a study. It is done in most hospitals. So apart from the platelet count that we have done, the NSI detection tells you immediately that you have contracted dengue at that moment. And say you've gone on to a week or so, and later NS1 doesn't become so prominent, the other indirect method called serology IgM, that is an antibody testing, is done, and that will show you if it is present that the disease was within a week to 2 weeks. And if it is a late sort of after the onset of the disease, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, then you get your IgG, and later on IgG being present. So IgG, or the antibody, is detection much later. But generally in our practice, as you can call us Kiasu or Kiasi at this moment, we do all these three. And we find that NS1 is positive, we know he still has the disease and active. Serology IgM, not ready, doesn't matter. But we know that NS1 shows he has got the disease. But serology IgG is present, it means he had a dengue viral attack sometime earlier. So these are some armamentarium, simple armamentarium that we have to detect dengue. Next, please. So what is the treatment for dengue? To be very frank and honest with you, there is no specific treatment available. It is all supportive, as I say. Basically, it is to rehydrate by intravenous fluids and by drinking water, oxygen therapy if necessary for patients who become very ill. Access to proper medical care reduces the likelihood that the disease will become more serious. So remember, access to proper medical care is the key word. Do not try experimental drugs or whatever that some people will tell you, whisper into your ear, hey, try this special tea or that tea. I will caution you to be cautious. Next, please. So treatment of dengue essentially is conservative and symptomatic. Paracetamol, Panadol, is the famous painkiller that we use for aches and pains. Do not use other types of painkillers which can cause trouble. Now, paracetamol is acetyl salicylic acid, very good and comfortable, and it takes away the bone aches as well as the fever and your muscle aches and things like that. Makes you a bit more comfortable. There are various types of Panadol, soluble Panadols, Panadol Extend, and what you call fast-acting Panadols. All those are available in the market over the counters. But I would not want you to experiment with it if you have severe symptoms. Things like NSAIDs. What are NSAIDs? Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are painkillers. What we call Voltaren or diclofenac, ibuprofen or profen, Constan or mefenamic acids, and aspirin. Don't use these drugs when you have dengue because they themselves can cause bleeding by dispersing the platelets and not causing a sort of aggregation and therefore leading to bleeding possibilities much earlier. So don't use non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Use basic paracetamol for pain and fever. Plenty of oral fluids, my friends, is very important in this disease because the virus takes away the water from you somehow by burning you up. By burning, you lose a lot of calories of heat and also fluid through your skin. Apart from oral fluids, intravenous fluids to stabilize your platelet count. Once the platelet count is stabilized and the platelets are stabilized, you can be on the mend or recovery, as they say. Apart from all this, the other keyword is rest and plenty of rest. Next, please. Treatment, as I said, there is no antiviral therapy available. Symptomatic management in majority of cases. Dengue hemorrhagic fever can be treated with suitable fluid replacement. No vaccine available. That is not really true. We have, but I can say even with that, we don't have a vaccine yet. I'll come to that in a short while. Next, please. Treatment with dengue hemorrhagic fever, as I've already said, very important apart from the resuscitation of crystalloids, colloids, blood components that we give back cell bloods when the patient is bleeding away and the hemoglobin is dropping, the platelets are dropping. You have to give fresh frozen plasma full of platelets, cryoprecipitates and platelet concentrates, as we call it, oxygen to stabilize the body, and inotropes and epinephrine, norepinephrine, all these drugs to stabilize the pressure and keep the heart going and beating before the patient can collapse. So these are treatments usually carried out in an ICU. Now, my friends, you have natural remedies to prevent mosquito bites, natural tips and home remedies for dengue fever. Now, as a clinician and as a doctor, I will not veer to this sort of treatment because most of them are not proven. Maybe in very mild cases of dengue, you take this along with Panadol, you'll probably get cured. But if you have not confirmed that what you have is dengue, then you're probably not treating the right condition. And do we sort of blindly take all these things when we don't know what we have? So my caution, to be cautious, is please deal with all these products with a pinch of salt. Next, please. Another row of what they call Siddha herbs. I know in India they have a lot of these products that say you will cure dengue by papaya leaves, carica papaya, roots, and embolica, that is the special berry that is used, and all sorts of things that people can come up in the internet or even in your by Googling here and there. You get various treatments. Be very careful. If your disease does not settle within a day or two, seek medical help. That's my aim to you. Next, please. Dengue vaccine is a vaccine used to prevent dengue fever in humans. That's what we think. As of 2019, one version is commercially available, known as CYD-TDV, and sold under the brand name of Dengvexia. The vaccine is only recommended in those who have been previously who had dengue fever or populations in which most people have previously been infected. The value of this vaccine is limited to the fact that it may increase the risk of severe dengue in those who have not previously been infected. It is given as 3 injections over a year. I'll show you a slide later. The common side effects include headache, pain at the site of injection, general muscle pains. Severe side effects may include anaphylaxis, which is severe sort of allergy, which leads to shock, and anaphylaxis can lead to death as well. Use is not recommended in people with poor immune infections. Those are ill with other diseases whose immunity is low do not take this vaccine. Safety of use during pregnancy is unclear. Dengvexia is a weakened but live vaccine and works by triggering an immune response against 4 types of the dengue virus. All right, next slide, please. I just mentioned Dengvexia to inform you that today we really don't use this vaccine at all. There have been serious side effects with this vaccine, and it is not to be given to those who have never had dengue before. Meaning to say, if you have had dengue before, you may want to try this vaccine. But I hear even this Dengvexia has been taken off the market now. Next, please. The vaccination was supposed to be done at 0 time frame, 6 months later and 12 months later. And that was a Sanofi dengue vaccine that came in the market with a wow, and it went out with a wow too. Next, please. This is very interesting. Regarding the Dengvexia, the Philippine controversy says in 2017, dengue vaccine controversy in Philippines involved a vaccination program run by the Philippines Department of Health. The DOH vaccinated school children with Sanofi Pasteur's Dengvexia vaccine. Some of the children who received the vaccine had never been infected by dengue virus before. The program was stopped by Sanofi Pasteur. They advised the government the vaccine could put previously uninfected people at very serious risk of severe dengue. A political controversy erupted over whether the program was run with sufficient care and who should be held responsible for the alleged harm to the vaccinated children. So that Dengvexia was stopped immediately. Next, please. In conclusion, I'll come to my final slide. Apart from what PDG engineer John Chia has told you about taking care of cover containers, using insecticides, clearing clogged drains, close windows, using nets and things like that, my message to you, what is called the take-home message, is please, please, dengue is a killer disease if not controlled. Know your symptoms. And all the symptoms I've already mentioned to you just now. Know your symptoms. The treatment is only symptomatic. There is no shotgun treatment for dengue at all today. And the treatment is symptomatic, Panadol, fluids, and rest. It is not scientifically proven. Dengvexia vaccine is mentioned only to be condemned. It's only for those who have had dengue before. Now we try to tell you not to even have it. Number 6, you prevent the bite, as my friends have said, and you prevent dengue. Get rid of mosquito breeding grounds. Very good. And at the last that I want to tell you is, please If you have any of the symptoms I mentioned, seek treatment early. Seeking treatment early saves lives, may even prevent the second disease called dengue hemorrhagic fever. With that,